When Tom Brady and the New England Patriots were so dominant for all those years, we thought to ourselves, man, do we hate this guy? Or, man, do the refs and the NFL just love this team? Well, the NFL's got another problem on their hands, it almost feels like, because we are seeing deja vu take over once again, and that is with the Kansas City Chiefs. It seems like everywhere I turn, all I hear is, man, the refs, this is fixed. There's got to be a script, and that's the key word, script. It seems like it's the word that we've heard for the last 2 years. The NFL has turned into Hollywood, and it is all a script. Whoever started that TikTok is probably famous now, but there is a script that we so hear happening in the NFL today, or is there? We're going to take a dive into that. But first, I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and with me today is Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
And once again, for our Wednesday NFL special, we got our guest host, Thaddeus Lloyd. Well, guys, another week has taken place in the NFL, and another week of, man, the refs, man, they should have made that call, or man, they should have never made that call. And yes, I'm talking about the Kansas City Chiefs as they faced off against the Atlanta Falcons. This was a pretty entertaining game. The Chiefs, however, seem to really like these very, very close matchups. It's another 6 point or less, give or take, win on their end, and they are playing in some very close matchups. Ed, do they really enjoy these uncomfortable scenarios that they're putting themselves in?
When they get in those scenarios, they've been there before. They have come out on top before in so many different ways on how to win. The the biggest thing with learning how to win in the NFL is learning how to win in so many different ways, and the Chiefs just know how to do that. Andy Reid has been around long enough, the future Hall of Fame coach. He's been around long enough, he's seen enough situations. He knows what it takes to get over the hump in almost every one of those situations, and he's got the quarterback that is on his same wavelength that helps him get there. So, yeah, they're quite comfortable in that uncomfortable position, which I can't really be said for many other teams in the NFL.
Yeah, Darius, I'm going to turn this over to you, but first I'm going to start with some of the key stats in this game. Mahomes finished with 217 passing yards. It seems like, wow, that we don't really hear that often. To Kirk Cousins, 230 passing yards. But I think what stood out to me was the run game. This is an Atlanta Falcons team that we were told Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, this is going to be a pretty good backfield that they have back there. And they were barely able to pull off 30 yards apiece on those two running backs. Carson Steele, who took over for injured Isaiah Pacheco, put up 72 yards. I mean, he was a good workhorse, 17 carries. But Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs continues to stand out as their number one receiver. He's taken off a load, honestly, off of Travis Kelce's back, because Travis Kelce seems to always be their go-to. And whereas the Falcons, Drake London put up 70 or 67 receiving yards, they did have a pretty well balanced receiving attack with Drake London, Mooney, and Kyle Pitts. But I think overall we're seeing that the Chiefs can still win games, even if Mahomes isn't having his best game, and Travis Kelce isn't in there. So, Thaddeus, did this really come down to that no call in the end zone, or are the Chiefs just that good at winning these games?
Well, I would agree. Yeah, that was a bad no call. It should have been called. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs are a great team. They love these intense close moments, and they always pull out with them in the end. And they aren't going to be stopped until someone actually does it. Um, so I think it's more on the Falcons that they ran the ball wide left instead of running it up the middle on 4th and inches. You could have probably QB snuck it with Cousins. To be honest, it's probably more on the Falcons than it was on the Chiefs, because the Falcons, despite getting the no call, they still probably could have taken the lead in this game.
Yeah, I've saw several scenarios where they could have taken the points then, and once again their defense held the Chiefs, could have gotten points once again that would have theoretically tied it if they had taken the points at the beginning. But yeah, it's always going to be now. Well, what if the refs made that call? It really seemed like it screwed over the Falcons. And yes, the Falcons did shoot themselves in the foot on that fourth down play where they did run wide left. It's all chess, it's all psychological. But for me, my philosophy has always been in sports, don't ever leave it in the ref's hands. If you want to win, you need to knock it out of the park. You need to put up your A plus effort if you really want to win. And that's the thing. To beat the Chiefs, you have to put up an A plus effort because they're just that good. Shoot, the Bills thought they beat them several years ago with 13 seconds left, and we saw what happened there. The Chiefs can win almost at any given scenario. They just know how to really pull it out. But Ed, have the Falcons finally found how they have to play to be competitive? Because yes, their record's 1-2, but they're a pretty good 1-2 team.
They are a good 1-2 team. And yes, you talked about how it was difficult for Bijan Robinson to really get going, even though they did try and feed him. It was 16 carries for him, 7 for Tyler Algier. But the fact that they are catering this offense to be more in between the tackles or down the seams with these large human beings catching the ball down the field. This is a two tight end offense with a dynamic running back. So, yes, having a trigger man like Kirk Cousins kind of figure out what the offense is actually built to do rather than just go out there and throw it to a few people and hopefully get down the field. There is a philosophy this behind the roster that's there. And the more they can lean into that roster, the better off they're going to be down the stretch.
Absolutely. It's funny because this Atlanta Falcons team, it is like an Arthur Smith type offense. He's just not there anymore. But with Bijan Robinson back there, you shouldn't be having issues like you are with this running game because he is that talented. And you need to be able to spread things out more to open up maybe the passing game, because I think Kirk Cousins has been good. He's been very efficient. Yes, he threw an interception, but and the Chiefs did leave the door open. Mahomes didn't play his best game either. 26 for 39. He threw an interception. They left the door open for you, but you have to play your A plus game to beat these guys. And I want to ask this to both of you here is Rashid Rice becoming one of the best receivers in the NFL? He seems to be very reliable, great hands, and he's putting up numbers. I don't want to say that's one of the reasons why, but he just seems to really be the guy that's taking over and really helping out the Chiefs.
That is. You're muted.
Sorry, I forgot about that. I was thinking last year, and I was watching him, his rookie year, and I was saying, he might not, put up a lot of numbers now, but he looks like he's going to be their number one going forward. And at the start of this season, that's definitely panned out. He's taken over for Travis Kelsey as their number one option, and he's very explosive with the ball in his hands. And yeah, he's just been very efficient. Him and Mahomes have been on the same page. And well, unlike last year, they haven't had a ton of drops so far. So
Yeah.
that's a positive.
When you change out half the wide receiving core, I hope you're not having the same drops that you had last year. With Rashee Rice, the comparison I've had a couple in mind, but I'm going to combine a couple of comparisons. For those that remember Wayne Corbett and Keyshawn Johnson being on the same team, if you put those two guys together, I feel that's what we're getting out of Rashee Rice at this point. Because Keyshawn, he had the explosive ability, uh, but he was physical enough to not have to rely on that. But Wayne Corbett had some of the stickiest hands I can remember, going back a few years. So having those two together in one wide receiver, it makes for a dynamic option that isn't Travis Kelsey. It's somebody that uh, defenses do have to account for. And given the explosive speed option that they have with Xavier Worthy, that just makes Rashee Rice that much more dangerous than what he was last year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the combination of those two players because yeah, he's becoming not only a deep threat but a quick slant, short route threat. He's just doing everything for them, and whether that be because teams are still scheming on Travis Kelsey and it's leaving that door open for him, or he's just that good. It could possibly be both, but what I'm seeing, I've been really impressed with that. And the Chiefs, they continue to do it's the next man up mentality. They did it when Tyreek Hill left, and they're continuing to do it, and it's working out great for them. So, uh, you know, kudos to them. But this next game here, I know this is going to sound almost rhetorical or whatever, but this was the blowout game that didn't end up being a blowout. This was a game that was all Baltimore. This was Baltimore's game where they were just dominating, and I'll say they still dominated, you know, three quarters of the game, but no one thought that the Cowboys had any chance in this game, especially after halftime. That's really what it was. This game was pretty much won in the first half. It was all Baltimore. It was all Lamar Jackson, and the Cowboys came storming back. Ultimately, they lost. It was 28-25. But Ed, this game had no business being that close, right?
It really didn't, because when you saw how Baltimore game planned against what is turning out to be a porous Cowboys run defense, and what is Baltimore known for? And now that they figured out that Derrick Henry is in their backfield, uh, what else are you gonna do? You're just gonna just keep pounding away, keep chiseling that rock until you get down the field and just put them away. They What the Cowboys were able to do, I've seen before, but you're absolutely right. This game was over. I want to say halftime, but definitely by the end of the third quarter, when they added that extra touchdown in the third quarter, it really got it to a almost unmanageable level. And to Dallas's credit, they didn't give up, but it was just such a high mountain to climb that there really wasn't any chance that the Cowboys had to make that climb and make it all the way back, especially with the Ravens being able to burn the clock with the run game like they are designed to do.
Yeah, and Thaddeus, we've talked about how the Cowboys, they tend to be, the regular season warriors, and Dak Prescott, you could say the same, but at this point, is he just a stat pad quarterback?
I think he's always been like that, and he's been in the league for almost a decade, and he's never gotten past the divisional round, but he's always put up those good stats. And I think it's very valid to call him a stat patter because he always puts up these great numbers. He's always one of the best, fantasy quarterbacks for you. Always throw in 300, back in the day, 400 yards, very consistently. And but have they resulted in any meaningful wins? I don't think so. When was the last time you had a good Cowboys victory, right? Like the only time I can think of the past 8 years Dak's been the QB was when they won against Tom Brady in his last game. But that was, Tom Brady's last game. That was it. That's all they've won pretty much. So I would agree with it and say, yeah, Dak is a stat pattern. They were down in the fourth quarter, multiple scores, and then Dak started bringing him back. This is what this game was. It was you got to see both the Ravens and Cowboys at their peak form. And what I mean by that is you got to see the Ravens have a lead and then give it away. And then you got to see the Cowboys and Dak Prescott and Prescott being a pat statter when it doesn't really matter. So,
Yeah. The Ravens being 1-2, and yes, this is just 3 games in, but they are clearly the best 1-2 team out there. But we talked about it. We kept asking, when are they finally going to establish their identity? When are they finally going to give Derrick Henry the ball and a chance to actually show who Derrick Henry always has been? Well, they finally did it. And now it's like, don't look back. I hate saying that being a Steelers fan, but don't look back. Continue to do it. That should be scary for the whole NFL because just between Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, they put up 230 rushing yards. So, yes, I know Harbaugh's probably still grinding his teeth every time Lamar runs the ball because that's your star quarterback, and without him, your playoff chances do fold. But they still put up quite a running threat between the two, and that's what I said on here before is when they can establish that, that's going to scare teams because, all right, are we guarding Derrick Henry or are we trying to stop the run up the middle, or are we trying to stop Lamar Jackson left to right? Because that's essentially really what it is, and they're going to continue to leave you with your head scratching. So the Cowboys, on the other hand, they don't know what run is. I mean, they should probably watch Forrest Gump over and over again, run Forrest run to learn how to run because they don't know how to. The stats clearly show it. They really do. I don't even think they had over 50 rushing yards. It was close to right around there. Not only can they not run it, they clearly didn't know how to stop the run too. So Dallas, although they looked impressive-ish week 1 against Cleveland, they've looked horrible the last couple weeks, and they've got a lot of question marks on what to do next. Ed, you got anything to follow up there?
Well, two things. One, when people talk about the difference in running styles in the same backfield, they list it as thunder and lightning. Unfortunately, Baltimore in the first couple of weeks of the season thought that it was lightning and then thunder. So you've got to establish the inside game with Derrick Henry and then let Lamar play off of that instead of the other way around. And in this game, they certainly did it. With the Cowboys' defense, they've given up 8 touchdowns rushing so far this season, which is the most in the NFL. So they are allowing their opponents to get so far ahead that the only way to come back is to pad Dak Prescott's stats. That is peak Cowboys football at this point because those stat numbers, those are what's driving the train as far as the money train going into Dallas Cowboys Stadium. And Jerry Jones loves that money. I love that money.
Yeah.
And now that he's paying Dak, it's we are getting exactly what he paid for. We are getting the guy that can, if you know the game is on his shoulders to drop back and throw every down, he's going to throw it every down. And thank goodness for Jake Ferguson, and because CD Lamb didn't show up, uh, Turpin, he's not on that same level. I, Jalen Brooks, certainly not on that same level. So Dak is just back there, just chucking the ball around, hoping something good happens. And guess what? Some good things did happen. They got 19 points in the fourth quarter to make it the 28-25 score. but my goodness, this is peak Cowboys ineptitude as far as putting together a game plan through building their roster appropriately and not just relying on Mike McCarthy's high flying passing offense, which is still pretty outdated, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, when your defense has given up 8 rushing touchdowns in a year, it really makes it tough to come back from that. So, I mean, they're almost averaging giving up 3 rushing touchdowns a game. So, it just hasn't really been pretty for them on defense, and because of that, their offense is trying to play catch up, and they're just not doing so well. But this next game I want to talk about is it wasn't much of a game, but it's the Jaguars at the Bills. The Bills are looking pretty darn good, and this is a team that a lot of analysts were kind of worried about because they lost Stephon Diggs. How are they going to look? Who's Josh Allen going to throw the ball to? Well, the Bills are proving all the doubters, haters wrong. They're 3-0 right now, and they just kicked Jacksonville's butt. They really did, up and down the field, but it makes you wonder what's contributing to this. Is it Josh Allen's MVP type of level season that he's having so far? That could definitely be it. He's a threat in the air and on the ground. Or is it possibly the offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, who, as we all know, Joe Brady was at LSU, had some of the best players ever to step on that field with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, went to the NFL, did not do well in Carolina, ended up here, and since then he has been maybe this type of guru. Thaddeus, I want to ask you here, has Joe Brady really helped elevate Josh Allen's game?
Yeah, well, ever since he took over, I think midway through last season, from the previous offensive coordinator, I forgot what his name was. What he's been doing is been giving James Cook the ball more and less out of Josh Allen's hands, so Josh Allen doesn't have to be Superman on every single play. Now the team is still heavily reliant on Josh Allen, but what Joe Brady's done has been giving Josh Allen an actual run game, and you definitely saw that against the Jags last night. The defense was completely fooled, like what they were doing. Like Cook was running around all over the place. Well, let's try and stop James Cook. Well, then Josh Allen was throwing, easy 30-yard passes every single play. So now it's really hard now for defenses to stop this because now the Bills have an actual running game for the first time in the Josh Allen era, other than Josh Allen himself. And it's got to be really tough. And now Josh can just play with more accuracy and consistency rather than, doing superhero jumps over everyone every single play.
But it's
I
so
will say,
fun.
and I will say, just for clarification, it was Ken Dorsey that was the
That's right. That's right.
OC before. And we've seen Joe Brady's offense. What he likes to do is he likes to leave options open all the time, as opposed to trying to pack in the offensive line and put so many blockers uh, into every play. He likes to leave more people out in the route, which provides more options for the quarterback to get the ball out of his hands. That has been a big difference in the way that Josh Allen is doing this. But also, like we've talked about on this show, the the tight end position is becoming so much more featured than what it had been over the past 10 to 15 years, that you've got another team here that has two very good receiving tight ends, and it's causing matchup nightmares for uh, for their opposition between Cook and Kincaid. So with those matchup nightmares, Josh Allen has his pick of the litter on who he wants to go to because they can outrun the linebackers and they can out physical the safeties. So being able to do that, having that stretch down the field, especially down the seams, that is opening those running lanes for James Cook and allowing him to do what he needs to do and and use his shiftiness to improve the offense and not have to rely so much on Josh Allen, like you said, playing Superman on every run attempt.
Yeah, it's to make it to where he doesn't have to play Superman is going to help the longevity, of course, of their season and hopefully go for a late playoff run because that's what their goal is. On the other hand, though, the Jags, what is their goal? They're 0-3. Ed, what do the Jags even do well?
It's hard to find anything really, uh, because Trevor Lawrence, is he really just Daniel Jones with blonde hair? I, they're, if you look at them side by side, they're not much different statistically. It's just that you can hide in Jacksonville a whole lot better than you can hide in New York. That's that is a big part of that. And I feel bad for Travis Etienne because he's a really good running back, and they could really build an offense around him. But considering this is a quarterback driven league at this point, the ball is in Trevor Lawrence's hand. And that's a shame because he is proving, as much as I was trying to hype him up in the preseason, he is proving that he is not a long term guy. He got a contract extension based upon one good year, and just like Daniel Jones did, and it's not panning out up to this point. Now, this is only game 3. Let's be quite clear on this. This is only game 3. There are still 14 more games to go, so he's got plenty of opportunities out there to not have to be benched for, of all people, Mac Jones.
Yeah. Yeah, Mac Jones. Well, I'm glad you brought up the Daniel Jones comparison because yes, if you have not seen, their stats are almost identical. And we just talked about a quarterback before this game in Dak Prescott, and you're looking at the tale of two different quarterbacks. It kind of is interesting because Dak Prescott being which we called he pads the stats. Okay, the Cowboys, yes, they tend to make the playoffs almost every year, and they're guaranteed to lose in the first round every year. Jacksonville, on the other hand, they did turn things around. They did go to the playoffs. They won one playoff game, and that was it. And both of these quarterbacks were rewarded. And they are now two of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league right now, where they are kind of different because Trevor Lawrence by no means pads the stats whatsoever. If anything, he kind of just gets by. Where, yes, Dak Prescott definitely pads the stats. And yes, they go to the playoffs every year. He was rewarded with a big contract, but can't win that game. Whereas Lawrence won one game, he was rewarded for that. And now here we are. Wow. Should we have done that? Well, they shouldn't have with Daniel Jones, and you still decided to do it. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But only 6 teams all time have made the playoffs starting 0-3. The last team to do it was Deshaun Watson's Houston Texans, and the one thing going for them, I'm going to say this to Bengal fans too, is you now have an extra game. Whereas before you didn't. You have that extra game. Hopefully it plays in your favor to then make the playoffs. But 0-3 is a tough hole. But yes, you'd rather be 0-3 than 0-6. Okay. It's still an early season. You still have adjustments to make. And shoot, the AFC South is not looking super strong. So Jacksonville, you've got some encouragement there that you could easily still win this division. So I will give you that. Um, Bengals, we'll talk about them another day. But yes, the Jaguars are going to need to turn things around. Bills, continue to do what you're doing. It looks like an AFC championship game between them and the Chiefs at this point.
Yeah, one thing you have to ask as a Jaguars fan is should the Jaguars have kept Gardner Minshew? Because well, now I love Minshew. Okay, I've loved him since college. Playing for my Cougars, but he's had the exact same career stats as Gardner Minshew. And when you look at the way these guys play, Minshew has more highs and lows than Trevor Lawrence does. But right now, Trevor's having a lot of lows. And so you actually have to question yourself, should At the time, it seemed like an obvious choice. Yeah, get Trevor Lawrence. He's only lost one game between college and high school. But now looking back on it, should you have spent it on like an offensive line or a better defensive piece?
Yep. It's always the what ifs. That's kind of the tell of the tale in sports, contracts given out, what ifs.
Yeah,
Uh,
roster building is such a fine line to ride that I agree with you. There's not much difference overall stat wise between those two quarterbacks, uh, but coming out of college, nobody's paying attention to the to Washington State, whereas everybody was paying attention to Clemson.
yeah.
So that I think has contributed just as much to this as anything else.
Yeah. Uncle Rico lookalike. Sorry, they weren't going to look at you. They were looking at sunshine. So, there were
Yeah.
several other games that took place on Sunday. Steelers defeated the Chargers 20-10. They were two undefeated teams going into this game. Chargers, Justin Herbert re-aggravated his high ankle sprain, so that's something to keep an eye on. Steelers, Justin Fields is playing clean football. He did have his first turnover, but Steelers are 3-0. And yes, Tomlin is hesitant on naming Fields the starting quarterback, so that's definitely a question that needs to be answered, or maybe it's some type of smoke screen. I've seen many theories online, but at this point, why not name him the starter? But that's definitely another question to ask. The Broncos and Buccaneers played. This was one of the weird games that we will see every now and then. Buccaneers came into the game undefeated, 2-0. Everyone thought they were going to win this game. Bo Nix, however, had something else to say, got his first NFL victory as the Broncos won 26-7. So I know David, our other host, is furious about that game. Packers and Titans. Ed's happy about this. Malik Willis against his former team did what honestly, I think the Titans expected him to do when they drafted him and so high like they did, and he looked great out there, especially early on in the game. Packers won 30-14. It felt good for them because it gave Jordan Love that extra rest, extra week of rest, to where he didn't have to rush himself back in and possibly hurt himself even more. So Packers fans are loving this, but Ed, I got to ask you really quick since it's your team. Matt LaFleur, see that master game planner?
With the fact that he's been able to take a quarterback that they just received like 3 days before the end of training camp and have to rush him in to start in game two and game three against his former team, he has efficiently run this offense. He hasn't, Malik Willis has not been required to do everything that Jordan Love would do. So Matt LaFleur has been able to game plan this to where he can inch him along in this offense and make it efficient enough to where he can be successful waiting for Jordan Love to come back. I think that shows a different level of game planning ability and script ability of calling plays that not not every OC in the league has at this point. But it also reeks of what culture is between a team like Tennessee and a team like Green Bay. Those are two totally different things.
Yeah. And the 49ers and Rams, this was what we like to call the injury bowl. This was a very collective effort from both teams on the IR and the injury report. and but we still thought for the most part that the Niners, well, two of us thought that the Niners were going to win this game. And they did not. Although they looked very comfortable, they looked like they were going to win this game. The Rams, they showed us, I feel like, a lot more of who they are and what they're, I guess I want to say built for. I know they're without a lot of their starters, but I was very impressed with Stafford and this Rams team coming back and pulling off this victory, considering a lot of the injuries they have. But the Niners, the Super Bowl team that was just there last year. This is not what you want to see early on. The injuries are piling up for them. They really are. So Thaddeus, you get a little bit worried with your Niners team on where they're heading at this point.
Just a little bit. Um, it was a tough game, I would say. Like they had the game in the bag, but then those old things with Kyle Shanahan, blowing leads in fourth quarters. Well, that happened again, and they were up 21-7. But then, oh no, here comes the defense with a bunch of penalties. Okay, well now it's a tie game, and then oops, look, the special teams are bad again. Give up a 30-yard punt return. Well, that's not great. And then Matthew Stafford does Matthew Stafford things and leads a comeback. And what I will say, the one positive we got from this is Brock Purdy has the potential to win without all the Avengers, as people call them. People still have their doubts about him. I've always thought, ever since he took him to their first NFC Championship game, top 10 quarterback. But people still have their doubts about him. Like, can he win without Debo, Christian McCaffrey, Kittle? Well, he was able to do that until the defense blew that. Like what was it? I was so happy I picked up Juwan Jennings the day before the game. Got me over 40 points in fantasy. I was so happy, but I'm very sad the Niners lost. But Purdy has shown he can do it without all of his all pros on there. So that was one big positive. I think the team, once they get healthy again, will once again be a dominant force. This is a bit of a loss, though, because now they're technically last in the division. So they're going to have a bit of a tough road to climb back up, but I'm not too terribly worried about it right now. I will be definitely worried, though, next week if they lose to the Patriots.
Well, speaking of that division, the Seahawks are the undefeated team that no one's talking about. I didn't even realize they were 3-0. I'll be honest, I really didn't. And I saw that, I was like, wow, that is surprising. So yeah, bringing up the division, them being undefeated in the top is definitely something. But yeah, Brock Purdy, with him being Mr. Irrelevant, last person drafted in the draft, everyone's always going to have their doubts. I mean, he could go undefeated, he could win a Super Bowl, and there's still always doubts because of that fact. But Brock Purdy has shown throughout his progression in his career so far in the NFL that he's legit. He's doing things that are really incredible to see, especially with him still early on in his career. He's still young within his career. I won't say age because he was in college for a while, but being that young in your NFL career and being the final pick in the NFL draft, your expectations were not high. The bar was not set that high, but he's exceeded that. It's awesome to see. And I think that Brock Purdy is a legit great quarterback. And yes, when those pieces come back, the Niners will still be a force to be reckoned with. But we did talk about kind of that two of us picked the Rams in this game. So now I have to ask Thaddeus, after this last week, where do the three of us stand in our records?
Well, after Ed had a horrible week 2 where he went 1-4, he managed to flip the script and go 4-1, which included his upset pick of the Rams over the Niners. So it puts him back in the race. I went 2-3 last week, and then Matt had a horrible 1-4, which was not good. So the standings are now: I'm winning at 8-7. Ed is now at 7-8, and Matt is at 6-9.
I'm
So
coming back.
We're all still within one game of each other, though.
Yeah,
No one's out yet.
It's really shown how things have swung so far within 3 weeks because I had a decent week 1, medium week 2, mediocre week 3. Everyone's gone through the ups and downs so far between the three of us, and just within 3 weeks. So if that shows us something, that shows that it's going to continue to do that. So I'm looking forward to this. But without further ado, we have some games that we had to pick for this next week. So let's start with the first one here, and that is the Saints at the Falcons. And I mentioned earlier the Falcons being one of the better 1-2 teams. I think that their record doesn't indicate just how good they are. The Saints, however, 2-1. We saw their incredible victory over the Cowboys, but it makes you wonder, were the Saints just that good or the Cowboys that bad? And well, I think my answer is a little bit of both because we did talk high about the Saints and their offense being how it's ran, but this is being taken place in Atlanta. I think that Kirk Cousins has shown that even off of this injury, he's still the same old Kirk Cousins, which some may take that as a compliment, some may not. I'll let you interpret that to however you want. But Kirk Cousins is a decently good quarterback, and I think that the Falcons will win this game at home. I think last week, seeing the Saints in their loss against Philly, I think it showed more about the Saints than anything that they just had one high the week before. So I'm going to go with the Falcons winning this game. They need to win this game, being 1-2, being at home. I'm going to take the Falcons winning this game. Let's go 24-21. Thaddeus?
Yeah, this one's a tough one for me because while the Falcons, they're not falconing it as much as they used to, they still kind of fumbled the bag versus the Chiefs. And then you have the Saints, who looked amazing the first 2 weeks, and then they were kind of brought back down to earth by a kind of not really great Eagles defense. So it was kind of confusing. And then Derek Carr did a Derek Carr thing and threw an interception in a critical moment. So this one is a tough one for me. So I think it's going to go between who's going to, make more stupid of a play. Um, and honestly, I think the Falcons might falcon it again. I'm going to go with the Saints, probably mid 20s, just like you were saying. But I'm going to go with the Saints 24-21, actually.
Ed?
Well, here we go. So the Saints over the first 2 weeks, they played the Sisters of the Poor and the School of the Not So Gifted. So, and then they get to a decent team in the Eagles, and they don't look near the same world beaters that they did the first 2 weeks. And guess what? In 3 weeks, defensive coordinators can figure out what you're doing. And it's going to be the adjustment to the adjustment that the Saints have to be able to endure. On the flip side, the Falcons, now that they are starting to figure things out, there's really hasn't been enough time for the Saints defensive staff to make those adjustments to figure out how to stop the Falcons offense should they continue on the trajectory that we saw this past Sunday night against the Chiefs. So I am going to take the Falcons in this, and I'm actually going to say it's going to be a little bit less than what you guys are saying. I'm going to go 23-17 Falcons on that game.
This next game makes for a very, very interesting game. This is NFC North, interdivision rivals here. Vikings, Packers. This is being taken place at Lambeau. I say that because that is an important factor. But guys, the Vikings have proven me wrong. They really have. They cost me a loss this last week as they put the smack down on the Texans, which I feel like we did not expect to hear that. But Sam Darnold, Sam Darnold is leading the NFL, I think, right now in passing touchdowns. I think it is. Who was that on anyone's bingo card? It wasn't on mine, but the Vikings are looking pretty dang good. The Packers as well are a pretty darn good team too. So this is a pretty even matchup, but it's almost like I don't want to bet against the Vikings because they've continued to prove me wrong. But I'm just going to. I'm going to bet against the Vikings. I'm going to go with Green Bay here, getting Jordan Love back. This is taking place at Lambeau. Packers love playing at Lambeau. It is such an atmosphere to be at. So I'm going to go with Green Bay here, being at home, having the high of having Jordan Love back. And I think that they are clicking on all cylinders too. I'm going to go Packers here. We're going to go 28-21 Green Bay. Ed, I'm just going to let you take this here.
Well, you say the Packers love playing at Lambeau, and they absolutely do. But you know who else loves playing at Lambeau? Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones being the running back for the Vikings this year, I expect him to have it's hard to say breakout performance because we know how good he is, but a performance that makes us all sit up like he's had before when he was wearing the Green Bay uniform. I fully expect that to be the case. The Packers, if Jordan Love is truly going to start this week, he's got to get his footing back underneath him. And considering how much is going to be on his plate and how efficient the offense has looked under Malik Willis, I don't know if you rush him back. So I'm actually anticipating Malik Willis to still be the starting quarterback this week. And they'll do well, they'll do fine. But one thing we have to keep in mind, this is a division where it's the only division in football in which there are 3 of the 4 teams in the division that are above 500 so far this season. So this is a really a test to see who can get ahead of the other. Because if the Packers win, they would be in first place by virtue of tiebreaker. The Vikings win, they get a full game. They get 2 games ahead of the Packers in the standings, and that's going to be huge as we get through the season. Uh, but based upon what I'm seeing between the 2 teams right now, Vikings are so much more explosive right now, and I think that is going to be the deciding factor. As much as it hurts me to say, I'm taking the Vikings to win 27-21.
Before we go to Thaddeus, Ed, how excited are you to watch Jair Alexander and Justin Jefferson matchup? Because that's iron on iron right there.
That is iron on iron, and I remember I y'all guys know me. I've been watching football for so long. I can make a comparison. I remember back in the days of Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders when they got face to face. It was just so much fun to watch because they were so much in each other's head that it was you could have a camera on that matchup the entire game and you didn't need anything else.
Yeah, it brings those fireworks. So I'm expecting those fireworks come Sunday to Thaddeus.
Yeah, it's going to be an intense game. NFC North matchup. Here we go. Early in the season, but it's still a very critical matchup. This division looks to be billed as one of the best in the NFL. I think we're going to get a fantastic finish. Right now, since the emergence of the Vikings, we really don't know who's going to win the division now. And I know the Packers look good, but the Vikings look even better. And I'm going to have to go with the Vikings here. The I just think the Vikings defense has been really underrated, and Brian Flores. Now, I know some people are talking about, him as being a head coach again. I actually don't think he was a good head coach, especially for the Dolphins. He was not good. People have, golden memories or whatever, but he's an excellent defensive coordinator. And he has this Vikings defense playing like a top 3 defense. And I think they are statistically, in most categories right now. So I just think the Vikings defense is a little bit better. And especially if the Packers rush out Jordan Love, I think the Vikings will win because I feel like if Jordan Love's obviously he's going to get some explosive plays in there, but in a critical moment, I think Jordan Love throws an interception and the Vikings get the W. I got the Vikings 27-20.
Yeah, and I know it kind of goes against my point since I did pick Green Bay here, but one thing that the Packers, I know they don't want to play catch up, but this is still so early in the season that yes, you could hopefully afford to not rush your quarterback, back so quick, because if you do that, he gets hurt. It is a long season ahead of you, where if you give him another week and if you pull off the victory, that's great. That's awesome. If you don't, you still could get him a healthy quarterback back the next week. So I think that's something to keep an eye on too, but it is a very close interdivision matchup. And that's the thing this week, the matchmakers this week are are amazing. I want to thank you because you have so many interdivision matchups, such as the one we just talked about and the one before with the Saints and Falcons, but you have many potential playoff matchups and last year's playoff matchups, which brings us to the next game here, and that's the Eagles and Bucks. This is a rematch of last year's playoff game, and we saw this just 2 weeks ago of the Bucks and Detroit, a rematch of last year's playoff game. So the it is awesome to see this, and the Eagles might have finally really found a good rhythm. I feel like give the ball to Saquon. Saquon can do things. He's shown that through his career when healthy. That guy is a phenomenal running back. Just like we talked about with the Ravens and Derrick Henry, give the ball to him. And yes, the Eagles could potentially be without Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. I saw Lane Johnson wasn't at practice today as well. That is something to keep an eye on. But I just feel like the Eagles, they dealt with those injuries last week too, and they still were able to pull off the victory. And the Buccaneers losing to Denver is embarrassing. They are coming back home. But I feel like this Eagles team is built to win even when they are sustaining injuries left and right. Give the ball to Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts, if he could replicate what he did that year they went to the Super Bowl too, which I'm starting to see a lot of similarities to, I think this Eagles team is going to be just fine. So I'm going to go with the Eagles winning this game. I actually think they're going to put up some points this game. I have them winning 32-17.
So, in looking at this game for me, first off, I want to give a shout out to the Carolina Panthers because they allowed Joe Brady, Sam Darnold, and uh, old boy from Baker Mayfield to leave Carolina so the rest of the league can actually do well by them and and so they can become the players that they could be. So shout out to the Panthers for that because that team is just terrible and that organization is not much better. But as far as this game is concerned, you're right. The Eagles have figured out the offense needs to run through Saquon Barkley instead of through Jalen Hurts. And that is a shift in the overall philosophy over the past couple of years, including the one that got him to the Super Bowl, which getting to the Super Bowl is what got Jalen Hurts the contract that he got. So it's kind of hard to go against that idea that got you paid. But if you want to be successful, you have to evolve. And the evolution of this Eagles offense is going through Saquon Barkley first and then Jalen Hurts second. On the flip side, Buccaneers, it is the Baker and Evans show. There's not much more I can say to that. However, this is a very prideful Buccaneers team. They know they can step toe to toe with the Eagles and the Lions and anybody else that tries to make their way down to the coastline of Florida. I think this is going to be a game in which they do take advantage of their home field advantage and eke out a win against the Eagles. Uh, just just something's telling me that that's going to be the case here. Um, Also, knowing the weather that is possible for Tampa, this could be a game that is played in a slop fest, which is going to negate some of the high flying antics of the Eagles wide receivers. So you're going to need a team that lives, breathes, and plays in that environment to be able to handle what the weather is going to be throwing at them. So I think this is something the Buccaneers, it favors them at this point. And with that being said, I'm going to say this is going to be somewhere around ah, a 21-20 game. It's going to be within 2 points for sure.
Yeah. Thaddeus? Oh, you're muted again.
You're muted again.
Wait, am I muted?
Oh, there you go.
There
No,
you
no,
go.
no. Okay, yeah. No, I got the feeling Tampa Bay is going to win this one. It's because Nick Sirianni has made some very, very stupid decisions these past 2 weeks, and he barely eked out a win against the Saints. If Derek Carr hadn't thrown that interception, and if if Dallas Goddard wasn't wide open on that 3rd and 16, the Saints would have won that game very easily. So I think Nick Sirianni's dumb decisions are going to come back to haunt him this game, and I just think the Bucks will bounce back. I think they're going to be able to contain Saquon to under 100 yards. Actually, I think they're getting Vita Vea back this week, which would be huge for their run defense. So I got the Bucks winning this 27-14.
Okay. Uh, this next game's gonna be an fun one because, well, it's the Chiefs and Chargers, and the Chargers, Justin Herbert, they've never really had Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs' numbers. They really don't. Yes, this is taking place at home in SoFi Stadium, and yes, you have a new coach in Jim Harbaugh, which does mean a lot. I want to say that. I just don't think it's going to in this game. Sorry, Mom. My mom's a Chargers fan, and she'll be at the game. I expect a text after she watches this video, but I just think the Chiefs are going to overclass the Chargers. I really do. The Chargers, what makes it interesting is Joe Alt is hurt. That's a really big injury right there. Derwin James is suspended, although he's appealing. I don't think he'll be there come Sunday. And Justin Herbert, yes, I've seen some reports that they're thinking about resting him to the bye week. I think that, and this is a very similar situation to Green Bay is facing right now, but I think that he may come out in this game, like he may start the game, but I think any sign whatsoever, he's yanked. I saw that with the Steeler game last week. Harbaugh said, any sign of a limp, I'm taking him out of the game. Well, I think it's going to be even more under a microscope this game, but I really don't think it's going to matter. I think the Chiefs are just going to really run away with this one. I see a 28-10 victory, Kansas City in this game. Thaddeus?
Yeah, I've got a similar thing. Even if Justin Herbert returns for this game, they're not gonna try to throw the ball a lot. And I mean, they haven't really. Like, I feel like Jim Harbaugh's been protecting Justin Herbert, and they were able to do that for the most part until he got injured. He re-aggravated that injury. So even if Herbert does play, I still have the Chiefs winning this like 23-10.
Yeah, I'm gonna I'm gonna ride with the one that brought me, and the Chiefs are gonna win until they don't.
Yeah.
It's just simple as that. We don't need a. I don't feel like I need a whole bunch of in-depth analysis to know that the Chiefs are really good, and the Chargers, they're getting better, but they're not really good the way that the Chiefs are. So I've got the Chiefs, and I'm probably gonna say Harbaugh doesn't give up a lot of points, so it'll be a dominating 22-9 win.
Yeah. To add on that, I don't know what happened last week, but they really got away from their identity because we saw it was the J.K. Dobbins show the first 2 weeks. And going into Pittsburgh, it seemed like they barely really fed him the ball that much. And J.K. Dobbins has had an incredible career against the Steelers. So I that did make me scratch my head a little bit being a Steelers fan because I was expecting him to run the ball down our throat the entire game. And that's not what happened at all. So I imagine they'll get back to that this game. The Chiefs are going to be a tough one to run against, especially with Chris Jones. But I just with Herbert, if he does play with his injury, I don't expect a whole lot of throwing. So give the ball to J.K. Jim Harbaugh. We know you love a game within the trenches. So, but this next game may be my favorite game of the week, and that's tough because there's a lot of great games. But that's the Bills at the Ravens. This is Sunday Night Football. this was meant for a primetime game under the lights here. And the Ravens coming off an impressive win. We talked about their identity, give the ball to Derrick Henry, and I think they will continue that identity. But the Bills right now are on a path on the defensive side of the ball. Historically, this is looking like an incredibly great defense, and that's kind of shocking. They lost one of their star linebackers, Matt Milano, before the season even started, and that made people wonder, well, is this defense still going to do great without their signal caller there? Or and they're answering that for you. They're looking great. And don't get me started with what they did to me on fantasy this last week because it pissed me off. But uh, because of that, because of what they did to me, I have to sit here and attest to how great their defense is. And we talked about how great their offense is. So on paper, and the Bills should win this game, and I'm going to go with that. I think that the Bills will win this game. And it's going to be tough because the Ravens do not want to fall in a 1-3 hole, and they do not want to lose at home, which is a tough place to play at. But the way that the Bills have been playing, just like how Ed said with the Chiefs, I'm going to ride with them. They're undefeated. They have shown nothing to me that's going to make me doubt them in this game. So I'm going to go with the Bills winning this game. This is going to be a low scoring game. I think both defenses show up this game, say low scoring, but I'm going to go with a 20-17 game here. Bills.
That is.
Yeah, it's everything what you said it's going to be. It's going to be intense. It's going to be defensive. I have been very surprised with how great that Bills defense has been, even with that, with some of their injuries. And I think with how they've looked to the first 3 games, I just don't see how the Bills offense has been stopped. They've scored over 31 points each of their last 3 games. Granted, they haven't been against the greatest defenses, Arizona, Miami, and Jacksonville, who are bottom of the league defenses. So I do think they will score under 30 probably for this game. But right now, Josh Allen is looking like the most unstoppable person on the planet with, like we mentioned earlier, with the offense. So I got the Bills winning this. I'll go with the same with you. I'll go 2017.
Well, this will be kind of anticlimactic. I'm going to take the Bills. When you have Von Miller coming off the bench for your defense, Von Miller of all people,
Yeah.
one of the best pass rushers we've ever seen, coming off the bench for a Bills defense, you've got something special. So I I'm with you guys. I actually think it's going to be even more low scoring than what y'all are predicting. I'm going 16-14 uh, Bills in this game, just because there's going to be so much clock moving that we're going to see from both of these teams that there's not going to be a whole lot of extra time to go ahead and you know try and run up the point totals. This is going to be just let's get through this type of game and try and come out in the last minute and win it uh, for your team. And I say the Bills are going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the over under is on this game, but I definitely take the under. I really feel like this is going to be an under type of game here. Defense is going to be showing up, but yeah, I'm taking the under on this game. It's going to be a fun game nonetheless. I really feel like it is because the Ravens 1-2 are one of the better 1-2 teams, and they are finally establishing their identity, which, like I said earlier, is scary for the NFL. But the Bills' defense and their offense is even scarier at this point. So I think that it's the Bills have to win this game. So there's a lot of great matchups. We just listed off 6 of them. So I highly suggest you pay attention to those 6 games, but it's the NFL. Pay attention to all of them. It's just fun to watch, and there's a lot of other great matchups to pay attention to. But if there's ones that specifically you want us to keep an eye out on, let us know in the comments. Let us know that we should be watching that game and what matchups, maybe key matchups we should be looking for, because we are at a time where the offensive line and defensive line is only getting better. We're talking about the Panay Sewells that are coming up, the Tristan Wirfs, Joe Alt, I talked about. And then, of course, the Max Crosbys, the TJ Watts, the Miles Garrett's, the list goes on and on. Those make for great matchups that a lot of people don't talk about because they want to talk about the receivers. They want to talk about the cornerbacks. But these offensive linemen and defensive linemen, that's where it's at. That's where most games are won, is within those trenches. So look out for those and let us know if there's a certain matchup that you want us to look out for. But also, please hit that like and subscribe button, and please share these videos because we really appreciate it. It helps us out, generates more views, and we want more people to see what we're all about. And so that starts with you. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.